Hi there everyone, thanks very much to my new subscribers and to my old subscribers. Tonight I'm going to do another How Does He Feel About You? I have in front of me the Five of Swords, the Hierophant and the King of Cups. This is deck 1. If this reading resonates, please like, share, subscribe and comment. If you would like a personal reading, my details are in the description box below with a link. So what this tells me is that your guy has been in a battle in the past. It's like he was in quite a fierce dispute. That's what it shows. It was a game of strategy, or it was a battle of strategies. Had something to do with, there was a lot of deception in the situation by the looks of things. Involving 3 friends. I think your person was involved in this dispute because he became jealous of what other people had. That's what it shows. And he got involved with some friends that had some ideas about how to win the battle. You know, it's almost as if they won the battle but not the war. That's the impression I get. And he's left them behind. As soon as he could get clear of this dispute, he escaped. And he escaped with what he could find. You know, it's almost as if he had some things to sell. So he collected what he could find, and then he bought and sold a lot of things to get himself clear of whatever it was that was complicating his life. It shows that he is a person full of emotion, but he switched off those emotions when he fled. So it was sort of like a battle of survival. That's the impression I get. And now he's just devoted to traveling by the looks of things, and I think we've seen this many times. He's devoted to his stabilizing his emotions. He's devoted to the calm now because he's experienced the battle. It really shows me that when he left all this behind, he became a much more conscientious individual. He developed into somebody more forthright. He developed into somebody more godly, more righteous. And he often reflects on those moments when he thinks of you. Because I get the impression that whatever happened plagues him. It stays with him. So he's had to look to a divine being to get himself right. That's what it's saying. And so I think he's looking to God. And he is in calmer waters as well. And he's really focused on his emotions and his loyalties, because he left all of his emotions behind. He left his loyalties behind. And I think when this happened, he decided to become a more rigid character. It's almost as if his passion is for God. His passion is for the God that saved him out and got him out of this battle. He takes some blame for what he did. I can see that he was involved in something, so it wasn't entirely his fault, but he takes responsibility for his part in whatever happened. That's what it shows. And I think because he's quite an emotional individual, it's really affected him on another level. And he's channeled all of those, that volume of emotions, he's channeled those into his spirituality. Because he knows that's the only thing that will save him emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Something about him has changed, and you would have noticed his change. And I think he would have been quite verbal about whatever his problems were with you. That's what it shows in the Five of Swords, that he wanted to discuss what was going on with him in the past. I don't think you understood from what he was saying just how rigid he's become, though. It's funny though in these cards, because not only has he become committed to his spirituality, but he's become committed to you. Deeply committed. There's still something about him which is a little bit deceptive, but also because I guess that's just part of his character. But in terms of love for you, he's very loyal, extremely loyal. And he's swimming in his emotions for you at the moment. I think once he opens up to you on an emotional level, that this relationship could evolve into something extremely loving, because he shows up as the King of Cups and the Hierophant. That to me shows like a marriage or a commitment or a permanent relationship. But there's something about the relationship which will be pure, which will be emotional, pure, sanctimonious. Something about your relationship is sacred to him. It's almost as if he appreciated life after seeing the effects of war. Now, obviously this is not a time of turmoil, but I mean that on a, metaphorical sense. Something in his life went askew and there was a lot of turmoil, and he's had to channel his energy into finding balance. And the way he's found that balance is by working on his spirituality. So he has since become an extremely upright character in many respects. But what it shows here in this scenario is his happiness, his loyalty, his purity, and his want to be very black and white with you in this relationship. He wants to be very frank with you. The money's getting away from him though a little bit. He seems to have treasure on the mind, so he has some intention to regain what he lost. And he feels that he can regain what he lost because he has something behind him somewhere. It's not something he has access to, but he knows where to find it. But he also thinks that the true kingship lies in his spirituality and lies in his emotions for you. I can see that he likes fishing, so you must live near the water, or you know of him going to the shore, going to a place that has water where he can fish, where he can go boating, something like that, because that's what he really loves doing. It's almost as if he's buried his treasure and gone on a spiritual awakening or something, had a spiritual awakening. That's the impression I get. I get like finding the treasure, burying the treasure, and going and finding himself, that's the sort of story that plays out in these cards. So something has obviously happened. That's what it shows. But it shows even though he has these very deep emotions for you, that it's a challenge because he's so rigid in those emotions. He's protected those emotions with his newfound spirituality. So maybe that means that he will not express himself in the way you would hope. Like I would think in the early stages of your relationship that you'd want to see some passion, you'd want to see some overt expressions of affection, that sort of thing. And what these cards are saying is that passion's there, that emotion, those emotions are there, but he's channeled them into something that's very rigid, because he's trying to be a perfect person again within himself. He's trying to live by the word of God. That's the impression I get. So you won't find him expressing himself to you like other men, because there's a method to the madness now. That's what it's saying. There's a method to the madness. He was, building castles in the sand before, building castles in the sand in terms of his wealth, building castles in the sand in terms of his emotions, building castles in the sand in terms of his relationships, and that fell apart for him in the past. So now he's taking a different approach. But what I'm saying is it's a much more rigid approach, because he doesn't want to keep building castles in the sand. I can see it's just him. It's just him and his spirituality, his emotions. He's really considering his love for you at the moment. He's putting a lot of consideration into it. He's praying for you. He's thanking the gods for your presence in his life. He's thinking about the warmth that you bring him. He's thinking about how loyal you make him feel, how emotional. He's thinking about the man that he used to be. He used to be one tough bloke, and I think he was really cutthroat. Like, he'd have women, he'd use women, he'd play on their emotions, he'd have women begging for him not to leave, and he'd be very curt with them, very mean to them. He'd leave them without a second thought, because he was playing off his passions, his basic instinct. And that's the sort of thing that he wanted to leave it behind. When the battle was won, he decided, and he got away from those circumstances, he decided that he wanted to be a different person. He wanted to channel his energies differently. And it shows here, by meeting you, by knowing you, you've changed him. And he relies on you. Is committed to you and loves you. Those are his feelings, because you've brought meaning to his life. And I think you've brought meaning to his life because there was a hope in you. He didn't have hope before, but he found hope in you. And I think the hope that he found in you was in terms of his emotional outlet. He's lived his life suppressing his emotions, which were very strong emotions. And it caused a lot of trouble in the past because he was in the wrong environment for that sensitivity. But now, not only has he escaped that past, but he's found you. And in you, he can see how those emotions can be directed properly, how those emotions can be directed in a committed fashion, in a sanctimonious fashion, and in a proper fashion. And he's also seeing in you a person that will appreciate those emotions he has to give to somebody. And that's why you're his hope in love. Okay, so that was deck 1. This is deck 2. I have the Queen of Cups, the Four of Cups, and the Lovers. If this reading resonates, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. If you would like a personal reading, my details are in the description box below with a link. What this shows me is that this is your true love. Excuse me. I can see you live near the water, but you're a person with very strong emotions, very strong love emotions. I'd say these emotions have affected you deeply throughout your life. You probably lead by your emotions. That's the impression I get. The situation at the moment is that he's not offering anything to you, and you're not offering anything to him in terms of love. But what it says is that this is your true love. You're very loyal to this man. You're very loyal to one another. In your mind, you think you can potentially have a family together. But it's just a situation where you're not acknowledging one another in that respect just at the moment. You know their cups, they're ready to take in terms of love. You both understand that. And you show up as the person that he loves, but he loves you dearly and he loves you deeply. It sort of indicates to me that you're the fish that slipped out of his hand. You're the mermaid that slipped out of his hands and swam away. That's the impression I get. So I don't know how that's reflective of your situation, but that's what I feel intuitively, that you've gotten away from him at some point in the past. He's had it in his mind that you're a person that he could love deeply. You're a person that he could have a family with. You're thinking the same thing, that you could have a child together, So it's a really good match. I mean, he's an emotional person. You're an emotional person. He leads with his emotions. You lead with your emotions. This is with the Lovers in the deck. It always shows a destined relationship. Something, if it could be glued together, could be quite glorious for you both. That's what it shows. it shows that you could make one another really happy. And that I find, like, just in terms of like sexual gratification, it shows that you will always be there for one another in every way, like in an emotional capacity, in a physical capacity, in a sexual capacity. You'll just want to be wrapped up in one another's arms all of the time. That's what it shows. And you will, or I also get an image of you with your arms around him, you always have a protective arm around him. He has a comfort arm on you, but you have a protective arm. So you're very protective of him, and you're very protective of that love that you feel for one another. But it just shows also in this reading that he is the more dominant figure in the relationship, because he wants to be. There seems to be, just at the moment, you're on equal footing. So I think you're playing the same game in terms of love. It's almost as if you know that you are one another's happiness. You are loyal to one another. Those emotions are deep, but you sort of turned away from one another at exactly the same point in time to prove a point. It shows that you are focused on yourself, and he is focused on forming a love affair with you. That's what it shows. He's not so focused on himself. In his thoughts, it's always about togetherness. You're always a lover in his mind, but with you, it's self-focus. It's very concentrated. It's a very concentrated self-focus. He has some impression that you have a kid, like a baby or something like that, but he doesn't have the impression it's his. So maybe you met and he just conjured something in his head about all ladies having kids at a certain age. That's the impression I get. But it shows you're very much independent. You're ready to give him that cup of emotion. That's what it shows. What's barring this relationship is that you're both turning. You've just recently in the present turned your back to one another. That's the inhibitor. And also you're the catch that got away, so I get the impression you've gone somewhere. Or he feels, that he didn't mean for you to get away from him, but you did. That's the impression I get from these cards. It's like he's waiting for you to swim back, but, once you catch a fish and you lose that fish, it gets away for good. That's the kind of impression I get from this depiction. But what it's really showing is if you find your way back to him, because it shows in this depiction that's what you have to do. If you are in the situation where you can find your way back to him, and you do, then this relationship is going to develop quite nicely. It will be a very grounding relationship, very fresh. It's very new, like being out in nature and appreciating the freshness. It gives you, it's like dew on a flower, that sort of feel. So it will be a very refreshing experience for both of you. But not only that, you will form a very deep deep emotions and deep loyalty for one another. And not only that, there is the potential to have a family. I mean, his thoughts on it will be like a guy's thoughts. He has a lover that he has strong emotions for. That will be the basis for why he wants to ground this relationship. But it doesn't change the fact that his emotions are pure loyalty, are born of pure loyalty towards you. And it's a different type of loyalty, I guess, because you have a focus on the love. He has a focus on the physicality, the mixture, the physicality of it and the emotional side of it, but it's more like he has a guy's perspective on the love affair. That's the impression I get. So it will be like on both sides there'll be inequality. You'll both feel very encouraged by the relationship. You'll feel happy. You'll feel really balanced in this relationship, and it will bring you a lot of freedom in your life. Freedom of expression, freedom of sexuality. It will just bring you all of those elements which a happy union should. So it is very promising from that perspective, because you have all this devotion there in the future as well. It's almost as if you will be joined at the hip. That's what it shows. But it's also a challenge trying to move this relationship forward into sort of a lover's arrangement, because you have this tendency, you're very similar in character, where once you become distracted, once you start focusing on yourselves, it's very hard to have the pair of you focus on one another again. It's like once you get away from one another, you get away from one another. And the other thing is that you are both a little bit lazy about your love affairs, and that's another factor which is stifling the current circumstances. So nothing's lacking in this situation, because he is potentially your true love. It's just that you have a tendency to get away from one another at exactly the same point in time, and you don't mind getting away from one another. You love the thought of one another. You love the feeling of one another. You know that if you can work this out in the way it needs to be worked out, then you have some success, that you have a chance of success with one another, and you live in that dream together. It's just that, you're a bit, I don't know how to describe it. There's a laziness about both of you. I wouldn't be surprised in love, in terms of love. I wouldn't be surprised if both of you were a bit older in experience, actually, because it just shows people that were like, oh yes, I found the one, but we're both doing other things at the time being. That sort of train of thought, and that's all okay. You're not like young people that want to be glued together all the time and are desperate to see one another. You're more like, it shows up as more of a like emotional situation, but matter of fact. It's like you both accept the changes in life. That's what it shows. But you love one another dearly. it just shows you deeply enamored with one another, especially you. Like, you're really focused on the love affair, on appreciating him. And it also shows it's like you just like to appreciate his body, but you're more proper. You know, you don't have to move things forward quickly, but you like to appreciate him. And he's a guy that might just, you know, kiss you on the cheek and give you a nice hug. It also shows that you're a bit of a kisser, like you like to kiss him. And it just shows his loyalty, like he's loyal to you. It's almost as if in this Four of Cups that he feels that he's making the effort, but he's the giver and you're the receiver. That's the impression I get. And I think into the future he'd like to have a slow dance with you or something. So I don't know if you know what his preferences are, or whether he's has a tendency to be in places where you can have a slow dance together. But that's what it shows. Those are in his thoughts about the pair of you. So maybe in his romantic mind he has a plan, and that seems to be included in that plan. A bit of dancing. Yeah, it just shows there's a barrier between you, but it's a lovely love. It's a passionate barrier. It's a superficial barrier. It's like a bramble. You know, it's nothing that. It's not an obstacle. It's just a barrier to your circumstances. And also you're in a situation at the moment where you're very stable, but there's something going on in your life which is upturned. Like you're a bit, between worlds. So you can't take advantage of every opportunity because you really have to focus on yourself. So that's, I guess, is the superficial barrier I was talking about. But I think he's looking forward to a future for you both. And he's looking forward to that future because he knows it involves a genuine love affair. But you've got to work on being together. That's what it says. So things can evolve the way destiny commands it. Okay, so that's deck 2. If this reading resonated, please like, share, subscribe and comment. If you would like a personal reading, my details are in the description box below.